This is Carolyn McCardle. Welcome to this episode of CEOs You Should Know. We are here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I am with the president of San Francisco Bay Coffee, Lisa Smoot. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. How are you?
Great. Good.
Caffeinated.
Caffeinated. So I want to start with your dad. I want some backstory on your dad, how he started the company, how everything came to be.
Got it. My dad was a visionary, and I can't say enough great things about him. He was born and raised in Detroit. He went to the Wayland Academy in, I think, Beaver Creek, Minnesota, or something like that.
That sounds right.
and then he went to Princeton. And my dad was always a hustler. From the time he was a kid, he was a hustler. So his freshman year in college at Princeton, it snows a lot in New Jersey. So his first year there, he's making money to put himself through college. And when it snowed, he'd knock on doors and he'd shovel walks for 25 cents, which was a lot of money in 1950.
Sure.
So he goes to this one house. He knocks on the door. The lady answers the door. Do you want me to shovel your walk? She says, sure. He shovels the walk. At the end of the shoveling, he goes back and knocks on the door to collect his 25 cents, and out comes a barefoot Albert Einstein. And he comes out, and he's just sort of looking at the snow coming down, and my dad was literally mouth open, and it was Albert Einstein's last year at Princeton and my father's first year at Princeton.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Did he give him more than a quarter, though?
No, of course not. But I have another great story about my dad. When he was 70 years old, so it was about 2003, my dad's always thought, we've got to do this, we've got to do this. So he said to me, Lisa, we got to figure out how to get on this Twitter. Twitter's the way we're going to start advertising. And I didn't know anything about Twitter. I knew nothing about it, nothing about how it works, what you do, any of that stuff. He goes, just go figure it out. So I posted something, which I now know was a tweet. I posted something. At the time, I didn't know what it was. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So I post a tweet, something about coffee. And later on, I'm checking and I get a comment from Sexy Sally. And I'm like, what the heck? And I go, Dad, Sexy Sally? Are you kidding me? What the heck is this?
What is this Twitter thing?
What is this thing? What is
for?
this?
Yeah.
And he goes, I don't know. You just got to figure out. I go, I don't think we want to do this, Dad. I think I'm going to stop doing this. And, if I had listened to him and stuck with it at the time, I mean, look at it today.
I know.
It's crazy.
Those tweets are there forever.
Well, I'm sure I could go find it. I'm sure I could go find it. I don't even remember what my name was back then. I might have said Lisa Smoot like a dummy.
I mean, honestly, I'm more curious about Sexy Sally and who that is and where she is now.
Well, if that was 2003, what are we in 26? That was 23 years ago?
She's had a life at this point.
A hard life, maybe.
A hard life.
Maybe.
I hope she's listening.
Yeah. Sexy Sally, if you are, you can call in.
Buy some coffee.
Yes. Fog chaser, please.
Speaking of stories, do you talk a lot about your dad? Mm-hmm. Was your dad the one who started the company, or did it come from beyond him, like grandparents?
Mm-mm. So I grew up in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Born and raised in Connecticut. My dad worked in consumer products. His last job before we left was vice president of Mitchum Thayer, which is a division of Revlon. Mm-hmm. And he did sales and marketing. And he got the offer he couldn't refuse. And so he came to us and said, what do you think? And I'm thinking, surfers, beach boys.
Yeah.
I'm in. Let's go. And the boys are like, oh, I have 3 brothers. Oh, I don't know. And I'm like, no, we're going to California. I want to see those blonde surfers. So we moved to Northern California. The water's 52 degrees. Mm-hmm. There are no blonde surfers, and I hate my life. And my brothers just thrived. And for a year, it was really tough. My dad worked for a company called Shackley, and he was in charge of their vice president of sales and marketing. And after a year, he said, you know what, this isn't great. I don't really want to do this anymore. And they had given him a year contract, and they said at the end of the year, if you don't want to renew, we'll send you back to Connecticut or do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
So he said, what do you guys want to do? And I said, well, we all said, we're already here. Let's just stay. So he started looking for companies to buy, and there was a toothbrush company, a dog food company, or this bankrupt coffee and tea company in San Francisco. And we said, well, we're already here. Let's just buy the coffee and tea company. So he bought this bankrupt coffee and tea company from The Perfect Recipe, which is a chain. It was a chain of coffee shops in the Embarcadero back in the 70s. And we got into the flavored coffee and flavored tea business. And we had an office on 3rd Street. And my dad, at 42 years old, I remember when I was 42, sitting in my kitchen thinking about this. At 42, he liquidated everything he had, took out 2 mortgages on his house, took all of our college money, and bought this bankrupt coffee and tea company with a senior in high school, a junior in high school, a freshman in high school, and an 8th grader.
And moved you across.
We were already here. We
Oh,
were
okay.
already here. We had moved for the
From
job.
Okay.
And we were here already. But he liquidated everything. And my mom goes, great, let's go.
Wow.
Crazy. There's no way I would have done that. I don't think I would have had the guts to do that.
No.
It's just, to me, it's too scary and there's too much unknown. But my dad was a really interesting sort of forward thinking person. And he just knew he would succeed. He just knew it. And he had the experience of big corporations from the East Coast. You know, he developed his skills there. So he just put it all to work here, and we just started going, and we started, developing. And I remember the first year, he's like, okay, I need you guys to help me. And he plopped down a bunch of catalogs on the floor, and we were stamping discontinued on all this stuff that was being sold by this bankrupt company that wouldn't help us make any money. And we were cheap labor. We did every job, as we got out of school, we did every job while we were in college and out of college. We did every job that, I answered phones. I did accounts payable. I did accounts receivable. Everything that we needed to do, we did to get the job done.
Do you have confidence in what you do now? Like, do you feel like when you make decisions, because now you and your brother, like your whole family, this is a family affair still.
Mm-hmm.
When you make big decisions for your company, do you feel like I have full confidence in this? Because it sounds like your dad was obviously such a confident man.
Yeah.
Does that trickle down to you, or is that something that you kind of learned from?
No, I think instinctually I know what I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my problem is sometimes I act too quickly, and I should stop and say, let's look at this from different, poke holes at it before we say go. Mm-hmm. So I have had to learn I've been doing this for 6 years now. I've had to learn my knee-jerk reaction's probably wrong, and I need to slow down and have other people challenge me and poke holes at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's I think for me, my dad retired in 2017, and I have a really bad memory, but what I remember at the time is he came to all of us and said, do you want to run the company? And I was living in San Mateo. I have 4 kids that were in high school. And I said, I can't do it now because I've got kids in school. And he goes, so what? Just move. And I go, well, that's not the point. You know, my kids have to finish their careers. He goes, oh, they'll be fine. Just move. And I said, but my husband's got his law practice in San Mateo. He goes, oh, he can visit you on the weekends. My dad was very single-minded in what he wanted, and I said, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So my youngest brother took over, and my youngest brother was always chasing the one-hit wonder. And so he started doing all this crazy stuff that sort of distracted from our core business and our core values and our core, what we needed to do to succeed. And after a couple of years, my dad said, this isn't working for us. Mm-hmm. And we had a family meeting, and we said, we need to get back to basics, and this isn't working. His feelings got hurt, and so he made an emotional decision and resigned immediately. And left the company. And then I said to my 2 brothers that were left, I said, okay, this was a Sunday, you need to come to the office tomorrow. We got to figure out who's going to run this. And they go, we think you should do it. And I thought about it for a second, and everyone was in college except for my youngest, who was his senior year in high school, well on his way to college. And I said, I can do this. Okay, fine. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And I knew nothing about nothing.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's so many components of that.
There are a lot of components, but there was a lot that we needed to strip away first before we could get to building up what we needed. Like, for example, there was a lot of things we were doing. We had a retail store in Kona. We have a coffee farm in Kona. And so someone had the great idea to put a coffee shop in. And coffee shops, you don't need a lot of space for a coffee shop. We had almost 10,000 square feet of space.
Oh my gosh.
And the landlord dictated that we had to be open from 7 in the morning till 11 at night. He dictated what we could or could not sell. And we were losing $65,000 a month.
Jeez.
I know. That's what I said.
Jeez.
And so I said, close it.
Yeah.
So instead of closing it, we remodeled it. And that didn't work. So we remodeled again. So literally on December 16th, my first day, I said, we're closing the retail store.
Mm.
Coincidentally, COVID hit in the fall. We started doing the unwinding of that and paying out of the lease and getting out of that stuff. Right after we did that, COVID hit, and that area still has not recovered from COVID. So we were so lucky in the timing of getting that out of the way.
Blessing.
It was a blessing in disguise. But we undid, in the first year, I think I undid 57 things that we were doing that. And I'm not a smart person, but for me it did not make sense. Why are we doing iced coffee? You know, when you're selling canned coffee, like the cold brew type of coffee, there's two ways that you have to do it. If you have it pasteurized, it's shelf stable, but pasteurization can affect the taste, and it takes away from the taste. So whoever put our line in decided that we weren't going to pasteurize, which meant you had to refrigerate it so it wouldn't go bad. But they didn't do the due diligence. So when you put those cans of coffee in those little refrigerators by the cash register, the markup the stores want on that is, 75, 80% versus 20 to 35%. And it was no one wanted to buy it because it was too expensive. I'm like, well, this is dumb. Why are we doing this? So I sold the line to someone who was a bottler. And when he came in, he goes, who put this thing together? It's backwards.
Oh, funny.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't figure out why we could never get more than 20 cans, 30 cans a minute.
Yeah.
And it was because it was backwards.
I find it so interesting that you came into the company and you undid things, because I feel like, and I am no marketing expert, but I feel like most people would come into a company and they'd want to just start adding just everything they can, just bring what they can and just keep adding and building and building.
Right.
And you came in and actually looked at it from a different perspective and thought, what can I strip away first?
Yeah.
It's almost like a reset in a way.
The easiest thing for me was that, we're on the West Coast and we are not very well known. We've never had a marketing department until 3 years ago. We've never done advertising till last year. So we didn't do anything because we didn't have the funds, we didn't have the resources, we didn't have the people.
Sure.
So we have a really strong following of the people who buy from us, but there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, especially in the West Coast to start with, because we're not in every retailer. We're not in every grocery store. So why are we trying to do cans of coffee when we haven't even sold to, the grocery store down the street?
Right.
So let's build our awareness first. And we also did we spent a lot of, I think it was almost 2 years of market research, focus groups, and talking to consumers and people who buy coffee and learning what the habits are and what's important to our consumers and we didn't even know who our core audience was. And it's also very interesting that coffee consumers are brand loyal, but they might have 2 or 3 different coffee brands in their pantry. So when this person comes over, they might serve San Francisco Bay Fog Chaser, and when grandma comes over, they might serve Folgers or whatever. There's a bunch of different ones that are in there to appease the different times and people that they're serving the coffee to. We didn't know that.
I'm curious to know, when you started advertising 3 years ago, what did you notice? When you run the numbers, obviously you have, what were the results like when you actually did put the awareness out there with your company?
Well, we also did consumer panels on what messaging would be important.
Oh, interesting.
The woman that I have running the marketing departments, she's very meticulous. She's very data driven, and she considers everything. So we knew, what would work, what might work, what wouldn't work. We knew what direction we should be focusing on, and the engagement and the numbers and I forget what all the metrics are that they use in marketing, but everything's been very, very positive, and it's a sort of the snowball is starting to run down the hill now, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's getting traction. So that helps with the sales team. When people are buying our coffee, the buyers in the different markets have heard of us, and then, yes, we'll take an appointment from you and they'll hear what we have to say. So it's sort of, as my team calls it, the flywheel is starting to spin faster and faster. And I think in the next couple of years, it's going to give us a lot of traction.
One of my favorite things about your product is the compostable pods. Huge, because how many of us have used those terrible pods where you think you can recycle that plastic and put the coffee grounds on your front lawn.
Yeah.
Put the rest in the recycling bin, which those plastic pods aren't even, I don't think they're recyclable.
I think there's
completely.
I think there's a special type of recycling you need to do.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on this, but that's what I think I remember. But, that whole sort of sustainably sourced environmental concern, taking care of people, that is sort of like in my family's DNA. For as long as we were doing social programs before social programs were cool. In 1983, we started building schools, medical clinics, bringing doctors into source countries to the farm areas.
You do a lot in South America, right?
South and Central, a lot in Central America, some in South. But it's it is sobering when you go to a coffee farm and you see people living in one of those plastic corrugated sheets of, there's 3 walls and that's that plastic corrugate. There's a plastic sheet that's the front door and inside it's dirt with 3 stones in the middle. And they sleep on the floor and they cook on the 3 stones in the middle, whatever they're cooking for their meal.
Yeah.
And because of the smoke from the wood fire, you can see the soot on the walls and they're breathing that stuff. And it's very primitive. They're very, very, they feel very blessed, but it's, we said we can't do business with people that let people live like this.
Yeah.
So we started insisting that the farmers that we do business with have to build accommodations. And it used to be in the old days, in the 80s, you have to import pickers to come to your farm to pick your coffee because it all comes in at one time. And if you don't pick it at the same time, you're going to lose half your crop. So you might have 1,500 people sitting on your farm picking every day, 6 days, 7 days a week. And they need a place to live and they need food and they need, accommodations. And it would be like one big, huge barn with just wooden slats for miles and miles. And you'd have a section of an area where you would sleep. And the families would put like a sheet or a drop cloth in between so they'd have a little bit of privacy. But, if I got sick, everyone in the same area would get sick. So we started, building housing units and we'd have, cement stone walls and you'd have your own little area. And across from that, we would have a kitchen area that we built with propane so that there's no breathing in of the smoke and that kind of stuff. And then there were bathrooms and things like that. So just providing that kind of stuff for the pickers so the farmers could make sure that those pickers would come back every single year. That was the first thing we did. Then we have doctors come in and administer to the sick people in the community. And we would, build schools. If there wasn't a school and a kid was walking 4 hours a day down a windy trail to get to school and then 4 hours home, we'd build schools in the community and then we'd pay the teacher salaries to come in. And I think up to now we've built something like 1,200 housing units, 62 schools. But we stopped doing that when COVID hit. There was no way, no one was doing anything. Everyone was sort of stuck at home. So that gave us pause to consider, was that the best use of the money and resources? And we decided there are a lot of people, coffee farming is generational and you do what you do because your great-great-great-grandfather told you this is what you do and this is how you do it. And there's not a lot of sharing of information because people feel competitive and they don't want me to do better than you. And there's not a lot of documentation. So we started a coffee training program, I think 2 years ago. And with coffee farms, you have to prune the coffee trees, just like you do in wine. Because if you don't, the tree continues to grow and then you'll start losing yield because there's so much energy spent on trying to get leaves out to the to the ends of the branches that it can't produce cherries. So if you every 3 to 5 years, you prune it up to 3 meters high, as it grows back, the yield in 2 more years will be higher. But for coffee farmers, that's a scary thing because you're telling them to get rid of a third of their revenue. So we started a training program. Last year, we trained 1,200 farmers on, especially small farmers. And small farmers could be anywhere from a couple hectares to 12 plants in your backyard. How to farm better, when to fertilize. And there's a way that you can sort of assess what your yield's going to be as the coffee tree is growing or the branch is growing. There'll be like a bud, sort of like when flowers bloom before the flowers bloom, there'll be a clump of whatever. And that will end up being the coffee cherries. And you can go in and count how many buds there will be. And it's usually between 13 to 18 buds per clump. And there's usually anywhere from, 25 to, let's say, 30, 40 clumps in a tree. You can figure out what your yield is. But they didn't know that. So just giving them the tools that they can sort of plan ahead financially. Okay, well, this is what I could be expecting this year. And then just documenting their yields, and what their costs are. And when we went to Indonesia, the Indonesian government loved what we did so much that they have given us a plot of land to use as a training facility for all the Indonesian coffee farmers in the area to come in and do this training with us when we go in there. And it's, we have video of one guy, I can't remember, he's in Mexico. He was very apprehensive about pruning. So the first year he didn't do what we told him to do. He did a small fraction of that. And he lost, I'm going to make it up because I can't remember the real numbers, but let's say he lost 1.5 million pesos that year in coffee farming. The next year with pruning, he broke even. The next year after that, he made 300,000 in pesos in coffee farming. In the fourth year, he made 1.1 million pesos profit. So he is sort of our spokesperson in our success story that we take around to all the other farmers so he can show them, hey, this really does work. You got to do it. Yeah. And it's not only helping him and his family. If you think about the ripple effect, the people in the area where he has to buy his supplies from and the farmers, and he's paying his pickers more. So the pickers have more money that they can spend in the community. And it's just a win-win for everyone. So it's been 2 years that we've been doing this, and I forget what our goal is for this year. I think it's 18,000. I think we did. What is it? 12,000. Yeah, I think it's 18,000 this next year that we're going to try and train. But people say yes, I'm going to do it, and then they don't show up, or they're apprehensive and they don't follow the program. So it's getting the buy-in too.
Yeah. Are you guys? What percentage of your company is family? I feel like you have so many family members.
We have a lot of family members, but not a lot of family members in the company. We have 5 of Generation 3 and 3 of Generation 2.
Yeah, you do such a nice job, too, of giving back. And it's funny, like when you shop in the grocery store and you see, like you mentioned Folgers, so I'll just use Folgers, and you just think like big corporation, right? And then we have these conversations with you guys, and you're local here in the San Francisco Bay. And it's just, I love hearing these stories behind the scenes about like what you do to give back and that you have family in your company. It's all these things that like make us love you more. Plus, bonus, your coffee tastes great. And you've got, pod to sod in 90 days.
Yeah.
So I love learning all this stuff about you guys.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
There's so much. And the thing that I think would be very eye-opening for the consumers have no idea how many hands touch each cherry and each bean before it's roasted and ground and made into that cup of coffee. I think it would blow people's minds to see all the different people who touch every single bean before you're drinking your cup of coffee. It's just, no one has any idea.
Yeah.
And there are the coffee market is very volatile. We had tariffs for a while, and that made it, the Brazilian tariffs threw the whole system out of whack. And at the same time that was going on, coffee is a very volatile commodity. It's the second most volatile behind oil on the stock exchange. And it's gone anywhere from 40 cents per pound up to record high in this year of $4.50 or $4.40. So there's a lot of volatility and there's a lot of uncertainty that makes it even, more stressful for the roasters and the farmers and everyone that's involved in the industry of coffee. There's so many people, if you think about logistics and, freight and shipping and all the people that are
So
involved.
many.
There are so many people that are involved in it. It's just mind-blowing.
I want to talk about leadership for a minute.
Okay.
And I want to know tell me about like a significant leadership challenge that you
Okay.
have faced.
I think the most significant challenge I faced was when I first started. I think my personal opinion was that the company was in a really sort of downward spiral. It felt very just heavy and not fun. And like you'd go into work and people's office doors were closed and no one talked to each other. And when I went to work, I was like, God, this place is a bummer. I hate this. And when I took over, so previously, if you said no to the guy running the company, you were punished somehow, whether it was you'd get in trouble or whatever happened, you ended up leaving the company. So the first thing that I said, the first challenge I said to my two brothers is, you may not say no to anyone. You may not say no for 6 months. If someone comes to you with an idea, you can say, thank you very much. Let me think about it. Let me figure it out and I'll get back to you. And I said, then you have to get back to people because shut people down. It shuts down the creativity. It shuts down the camaraderie. It shuts down the collaboration. It shuts down everything. And then we also had everything was done in silos, which was ridiculous. And we had when I first started, we had a problem at our plant in Mexico. And my CFO came to me and said, hey, we got a problem in Mexico. And I said, okay, what's the problem? And he told me, and I said, well, ask some questions. And he goes, well, I don't know. I've never been there. And I go, what? You're the CFO of the company. What do you mean you've never been there? I go, get on a plane and get down there and figure out what's going on. And he was like, oh, okay. And our green team, there was a problem, something that we have a bunch of people, we call them the green team, that buy the coffee. They check the quality, the consistency. They're in charge of buying everything that we roast and package. And there was a problem with a lot or an order that came in. And I said, what's the problem? And they said, well, we think it's blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, what did the quality team say? And they said, well, we don't know. We're not allowed to talk to them. And I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
You should be hand in hand working together on these things. So it was stripping down the walls and creating more of a collaborative environment. And that took a long time because I think people were sort of very guarded in making sure that, pinch me, is this too good to be true? But I remember thinking one day when I came in, and I equate this to, I'm a mom, and I remember when my kids, the first time they did something, whether it was a laugh or a stand or a mama or whatever, I remember my head swinging around going, oh my gosh. And it was, sort of an awe-inspiring moment. And I came into work one day, and as I walked in, we have a table over near the coffee area, and there were a bunch of people standing there, and they were all having coffee, and they were laughing. And it was something that I had not heard in a very long time. And it made my head spin, and I go, oh, we're back.
Yeah.
We're back. It was the beginning. And, I never want to be the smartest person in the room. I always want to be challenged. I want to challenge people. And I think there's a way to do that. So it was a creating the mindset that just because we've always done it this way doesn't mean this is the right way.
Yeah.
What is the best way to do it? Is there a better way to do it? And, I'm not, I remember we had a problem and we had all these senior leaders trying to figure out this problem. And I go, well, have you asked the coffee roasters? Those guys have been doing this for 25 years. They know better than you. Go ask them. And they were like, oh. So it was sort of giving people permission to look to not know the answer, one, to ask for collaboration and say, poke holes at my theory. This is what I think I want to do.
Yeah.
So that came along. And then the next thing was creating a positive culture, and making sure that people understood that, we have mission, vision, values, and we have expectations for you. And then also, what do you want to do? There was a guy who when I first got there, we had no formality to pay periods. And you'd be there for 25 years and you'd just get every year cost of living increase, and it would keep going up and up and up. And I was like, well, that's stupid because it's going to break the bank. Mm-hmm. So we created job descriptions, pay bands, and if you're going to be in the quality control department, you make, let's say, between $5 and $10 an hour. I'm making this up. I don't remember what it is. And so Hugo had worked for us for 25 years, and he said, Lisa, this is not fair to me. And I said, okay, talk to me. Why is this not fair? And he said, I've been here for 25 years, and Katie just came in. She's brand new, and she's making the same amount as me. Mm. And I said, okay. I said, Hugo, there's a list on the wall of every single job with the low end of the pay band and the high end. If you want to make more money, go after another job. Mm-hmm. I said, you are better than what you're doing here. All you're doing here is the same thing every day. You're not even exerting your creativity. So he finally, after years, went out and he started working out on the floor as a quality supervisor for their operations. And then when something opened up in green, he moved up again. And I think it gave people permission to dream bigger than they were dreaming, if you will. And so he's now in our green department, and he's in charge of all the creating the roast profiles for all of the coffees that we do. And then wherever we're roasting coffee, whether it's a sample that we're cupping or on a machine, making sure it's the exact same roast profile wherever we are so that it's consistent across the whole thing. And he every day comes to work with a smile on his face, and he's so happy. And I said, you know what, Hugo, 6 years ago, you wanted to, keep me in the fanny. Yeah. I said, look at you now.
Coming to work smiling and enjoying his job.
And that's, you spend so much time at work, you shouldn't be coming to work going, oh, this is such a bummer. Mm-hmm. So I really enjoy talking to people, what do you want to do? And how making sure we're not really good. We're good at promoting people, but we're not really good at helping the people we've promoted to get the tools to recognize who their employees are, whether they're, how do you get out the best of your employees? And if they are a rock star that maybe could be going up higher, how do you recognize that?
Yeah. There's something to be said about creating a culture and working for a manager that you genuinely feel like you are a valuable part of the company. And it sounds like you've done a really good job with that.
Yeah.
Coming in and clocking in every day and doing your job.
Yeah.
Like anybody can do that. But when you feel like your ideas matter and you've got somebody like you that goes to Hugo and says, like, we want to help you. Look, you could be doing this instead. Yeah. You could be making more. We value you. You've been here for 25. That says a lot about you and your culture.
It's, what, my dad, when he was running the company, he used to walk around the office twice a day. Mm. And so I do it 3 times a day because we have 3 different shifts. And I try and talk to different people in every shift. And I learned this from my youngest. When he was in elementary school, I had to go to either Costa Rica or Mexico for something. Everyone else was in high school. I didn't have a babysitter, so I said, come on, you're going with me. And my biggest fear growing up is that, or my kids growing up, was that they'd get kidnapped. And we're at this resort or something, and I'm trying to talk to these farmers in broken Spanish/French. Uh-huh. And I look around and I can't find my son. And I'm like, oh, crud. So I get a little bit panicked, and I'm, walking around, and it's a really big outdoor patio. And I come around the corner, and he's sitting at a table looking across at someone else. And there's a line of my employees behind the person he's talking to. And I'm like, what's going on here? Oh, hi, Mom. And I'm like, what's going on? And this guy who works for me goes, oh, we're just talking. And I go, and I thought Michael was in trouble.
Yeah.
Because it looked like the conversation was serious. And Andro said, no, actually, Michael's asking me what I like about my job. And Michael at the time was like in 6th grade. What I like about my job, what I don't like about my job, and if I could do any job at the company, what would it be? My 6th grader was saying that.
Did he get that from you or your dad?
I got that from him.
That's
I'm not
crazy.
Kidding. I know. And so, and I watched him talking to them, and they were truly talking to him as an adult. He's in 6th grade, but they were giving him honest answers. And I thought, those are really good questions.
Yeah.
And I note to self, I'm going to start. So I ask those questions a lot of times, and I get a lot of really good ideas. I have one woman who came to me one time and she said, "Hey, can I talk to you about something?" I said, "Sure." And she said, "Can we get a?" She said, "Right now when we're working on the line and if we have to go to our locker because it's our time of the month, it's really embarrassing because we have to go all the way to the break room. Our purse, you can't have your purse on the floor. We have to get whatever supplies we need. Then we have to walk back in. We have to go to the bathroom. Then we have to go back to our purse. We have to wash our hands and come back. It's really embarrassing. Can we have a machine in the women's bathroom?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe we don't have one."
Aw.
I mean, I just assumed that, right?
Yeah.
I just assumed.
Yeah.
So I said, said to HR, "Figure that out, and put a machine in there." And they said, "Well, yeah, there's a problem because, they can't have money in their pockets because if it falls out of their pockets in the coffee mate."
Oh, yeah, of course.
And so I was, oh my gosh. So I said, "Okay, put it in there for free and just put a note on there saying, this is enough that should last a certain amount of time. And if you guys take advantage of it, it's going away." And there's never been a problem.
Wow.
I know, but those kinds of things, that you just assume. So I don't assume anymore. I am, one of my leaders always is saying, "Lisa, be curious." So instead of making assumptions, which I do very, very rapidly and very frequently, I am, now asking questions and trying to understand. And that's the way we always did business. That's not the right way to do business. So, we need to make sure that we're taking care of our employees' needs, because they're choosing to come to work all day. In the old days, we're up in Lincoln, California. It's hotter than heck up there. And because we're roasting coffee, it's hot in the warehouse. It could be 109 in the office. And these people are choosing to come to work and clock in and sit there. There's no air conditioning. You can't do air conditioning. So 2 years ago, do the best you can. Get an air conditioner, get something in here that's going to make it a difference. And we have this contraption. It looks like a big sock that runs through the walls. And last year, it never got hotter than 85 degrees in the warehouse, which made a huge difference.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much." And it's, make it easy for them to do their job.
Yeah.
Don't make it harder for people to want to come to work.
How nice for them as employees, though, to have managers that actually care about their well-being and want the best. Because guess what? If you care about them and you're giving them the resources that they need to do a good job, it's a win-win for everybody, for them and for you.
Exactly. My dad always considered our employees like family. And so, and without them, we wouldn't have a business because we could not roast and produce our coffee if we didn't have them. When we used to be in San Leandro, California, and after the earthquake, was it 89 earthquake?
89.
There was a coffee roasting company, I think it was in Los Gatos. Coffee roasters roast with gas. And their gas line severed and the building blew up and I don't know if someone died or got hurt, but my father said, "That's it, we're moving. We got to get out of San Leandro." And when you take in consideration where the fault lines are, you had to get past that. And then we were into the flood zones. So we ended up looking in Lincoln and there was 1 million square feet of XHP warehousing. They had said, "We're coming to California," and they were here very short-lived, and then they said, "This stinks, we're out of here." So we were coming, and my dad, before we came up here, my dad hired, I think there were 3 56-passenger buses, and he, the employees he wanted to come, he put them on a bus, and we came up to Lincoln, California. We toured Lincoln. We had realtors that talked to them about housing, schools, you name it, to give them sort of a sense of what this would mean moving to Lincoln. And a lot of the people who moved every single person that we asked to move said absolutely. And some people tell us stories of, when they were in East Oakland, they're coming out to take their kids to school and there's someone shooting up on the streets, or there's a shootout or, gunfire or whatever. And they were moved from a place where it was not safe to raise your family to a place where they could raise their family. And, when I've had people that have come to me when they've retired and said, "If it hadn't been for your father, I would not have been able to afford a house and buy a house. And I owe everything I have to your father." So, he took care of his people, and it is not lost on me that I have to continue on with that. That's really important to me.
What do you think your dad would think if he was, looking down on you today and if you got to have a conversation with him again? What do you think he'd say about the business now and the job you've done with it.
You know what? I think he'd be very happy and very proud. For the first reason is that I've got Generation 3 coming in, and I'm doing. My dad used to, when we were doing our job, I'd say, "Dad, I don't know how to do a marketing plan." He's like, "Figure it out. Just go do it." And I never did it because we didn't have any marketing to do. But so we have development plans for these guys, for Generation 3, in their individual jobs, and on top of that, I am throwing them into the pit. Like when we had our senior leadership doing our strategic planning for the next 3 years, Generation 3 came in and watched what we do and how we do it. They have quarterly or monthly financial meetings with our CFO to talk about finances. And we have a very complicated business because we have businesses in Mexico and in Panama and in Rwanda and in other areas. So it makes it very complicated. So he's helping them to get acclimated and get more familiar with the financials of that. And then in this next year, they all have individual development plans. And once they've got into that, I'm going to focus more on, what does it mean to be a Rogers or a Smoot in this business? And my dad's old CFO is helping me in a project. He's actually come back and he said, "This is so much fun. And I have so much respect for your father. He'd be so proud of you, as am I. And I would love to help you develop a Generation 3. So he's going to help with some development plans and telling him stories about working with my father and all the fun things that they did. So that's
really neat.
It's really, really
That's
neat.
really neat.
Yeah, it is. It's, he and my mom said whatever my dad wanted to do, my mom said, yes, go ahead, do it. But both of them, their whole life was their family and their business. And my dad had very strong opinions about how to do things, and it's my way or the highway. That part of the business, I think, I don't agree with. Yeah, but
it was a different time, though.
It was a different time. And, my dad was born in 1933. So, they had the traditional marriage when we were in Connecticut. My dad took the train to New York, and my mom was home with the kids. And we'd pick them up from the train station, and the kids would be in our pajamas. And,
Mom would cook dinner.
Mom would cook dinner,
and she would serve him on a tray.
Exactly, exactly. And you'd have your family dinner.
Yeah.
And, it was very, very traditional. And then when my dad passed, I realized my mom literally had no idea. He took care of all the bills.
Yeah. She didn't know how to, pardon the phrase, but she didn't know how to live.
No,
because
she didn't.
He had done everything.
And I learned the hard way that because everything like the credit card was in his name, when the bank found out that he died, they turned off the credit card. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll use a credit card, but she had to apply for a credit card. And then, my mom was like, oh, you do it for me, honey. And by that time she was 80, she was too old, she didn't want to, but, they had the very traditional marriage. And it was funny because when we first started working, my dad was, he was sort of traditional, but not traditional. Like he wanted me up in Lincoln every single day. And I'm like, well, I have little kids and I can't do that every day. I worked from home. But he also expected, my husband to be the breadwinner in my family. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way, Dad.
Not anymore.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It's 50-50. So
yeah, it's so different.
Yeah, it is different.
So what is next for San Francisco Bay Coffee Company? Any exciting developments or expansions that you guys have that you can talk about?
Oh, gosh, we've got obviously a lot of fun things planned. The most obvious thing that we're working on right now is we have a lot of old antiquated equipment. So it's upgrading our equipment, making sure that we have the best state-of-the-art equipment to roast the coffee perfectly and make sure it's an efficient way to do it. We have been working for the last year on a package redesign for the San Francisco Bay brand, which will be coming out in the spring. And it is a complete departure from what we do, what we've ever done before, which makes me nervous, but it's exciting. It's really...
It's going to be great.
It's going to be great. I know it's going to be great. And the reason I know it's going to be great is because we did the research and the consumer panels all pointed to the direction we're going to be going. So that's coming out, I think, in April or May. And then
that's soon.
Yeah, that's soon.
Oh my
We're
gosh.
working on it now.
Okay.
And then the last thing is, if all things go as planned here, we will finish modernizing our plant and streamlining our processes and then open a second plant someplace else in the United States.
Good tease.
I know.
Good
It is a good
tease.
tease.
Come on, April.
Yes. Oh, you just wait.
If there was, let's say, one thing that you wanted people to take away from your mission, if you could pick one thing, what would that one thing be?
Do your homework. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of terms that have been, whitewashed over the years, whatever they are. Do your homework and make sure that the companies you're supporting support your values, have the same values as you do.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone can say, oh, we are, sustainably sourced, or we are this, or we are that. But, there are varying degrees of that. And what does that mean? And, there are different certifications. And I think you just need to, find someone that resonates with what you believe in. And then, unless they prove you wrong, stick with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, final question for you before we go.
Okay.
Is there a call to action that you would like to share? Like, how can people engage or support the work that you guys are doing?
Well, the obvious way is, by
Aside
purchasing,
from buying your coffee.
Yeah, well, buying our coffee. We entertained the idea of, if people, because we had people writing in at one point saying, oh, I want to help you build this school. I want to help you do this. But it's too hard to track from a, IRS standard. So I would just say just supporting the brand by buying our coffee, right? And the more that we sell, the more we can do, the more coffee people we can train and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for the work that you do.
I appreciate it.
We're obviously in the Bay Area.
Yes, we are.
Recording this in the Bay Area. And
Yes.
you guys are so entrenched in the Bay Area now. We love it. Thank you for
you.
advertising.
Yes.
That's how we found out about you. So,
Yes. I appreciate
keep up
your
the
time.
keep up the good work.
Thank you.